Hello everyone, my name is Jesse White, and this is my curriculum assignment for KIN-562. This is the fitness education presentation. Go ahead and jump right into it. All right, so right off the bat, we'll talk about my client information in the health and movement assessment. So my client was a 30-year-old female, and her fitness level was a beginner. She didn't really have any experience whatsoever with resistance training. Most of her exercise was cardio-based and body weight training. She didn't have any prior or present injuries at the time. So we went ahead and we moved with the assessment tools that we utilized, which were the PARQ questionnaire, which ran through a bunch of checklist items that would identify any type of health risk factors, whether they were related to injuries, genetics, previous health conditions, what have you. And then we also used the functional movement screening. And this was comprised of 7 total tests, and we have the results for that in a later slide. But this is more of the physical observant assessment. So this is where I, as a practitioner, could evaluate the individual doing these tasks and see if there's any discrepancies or issues or imbalances that could present themselves. So from my screening results, the verdict for the PARQ was those no risk factors or concerns identified. There was no need to consult a physician. Therefore, Riley was free to push forward and proceed with the exercise programming. As far as the movement screening test, she had a total score of 16, which is actually pretty decent given her beginner status. As you can see there, the main factor that was an issue for her was the depth of her squat. She was having a little bit of issues getting deep down into that squat. Therefore, she couldn't break that parallel point, which gave her a category 1 score with the deep squat. Overall, her main weakness that she identified and that kind of reads through the test was her squat depth, upper body, core strength with the push-up portion of that, and then just her overall stability. She felt like most of it was in the lower portions of her body and also her core strength. So going with that into our client goals, what she wanted to do was increase her lower body strength and improve her core stability. So we kind of dwindled that down to a more objective goal of increasing her goblet squat 1 RM by 20 pounds within the 8-week window that we had. So we went about doing that by developing this training program, and my training split, I decided to go with upper-lower. And the main reason for doing this is I wanted to get Riley the most exposure as possible to the upper and lower bodies repetitions throughout the week. So by having that upper-lower split, you get more days within the week that you can focus on the multiple muscle groups. That was the main thought and logic behind that. And so she had 4 training days per week with a midday recovery point, which was on that Wednesday. And then she also had the weekends for recovery. Like I said, she was a beginner lifter, so I didn't want to overwhelm her, and her body's not really regulated or used to this type of workout, so I didn't want to overtrain her with anything. The periodization method I used was linear. That's Kirksick et al. 2009 with a 3 to 10% weekly progression in resistance. So with that linear progressive overload, as the resistance and the weight is added, those rep ranges are going to start to come down, and the bigger the resistance is going to increase. And as you can see right here, there were some critiques on my original program of being a little bit too much in there for a beginner lift. So I omitted those red line items. So the seated dumbbell bicep curl and the dumbbell overhead tricep extension. The reason I deleted those from it, they didn't really meet her overall goal necessarily. So I omitted those from the training routine to take away from that bigger. Again, exercise critique video is right there. You can click on that and view those 2 different exercises, but I do have a quick little summary of that. So the lower body exercise that I used was the goblet squat, and the common critique throughout the whole training plan while she was going through was, again, just not getting deep enough into that squat. And she was also at times leaning forward with the weight, so she wouldn't like seat down into the weight and try to use that counterbalance with her body. So that was like the main thing right there. she was a great example of that in the video, and you can see her kind of working through that. And she does, in fact, get a very deep um, below parallel squat. The upper body exercise was a dumbbell seated shoulder press. And the main thing she was doing with this one is when the weight was added or she was fatigued, she would begin to scoot that butt up and then press her shoulders into the back of the bench as it's at a 9-degree position to press up. And what she was doing there was pretty much turning her shoulder press into an inclined bench. And that was focusing more on her chest when the goal of that exercise for this program was to focus on the shoulders. Again, we walked through the cues and the steps of how we mitigated that moving forward. So throughout this whole time, think about faith integration and just what this profession does. You know, we're here to help people any way possible with a health-centered mindset. And the three things that came to my mind were the 1 Corinthians 6:19, Matthew 5:16, and Mark 10:45. So just kind of wrapping my head around that whole the body is the temple mentality. So we are the Christians presenting ourselves to the world and just having that good image, that Christ-like image about us. We need to stay in shape. We need to be able to present a healthy image. At least that's my opinion. And the let my light shine. So not only just the physical aspect of it, but also the positive mentality, the always looking to help, which goes into the Christ-like and serve others of Mark 10:45. So just always wanting to be that one that advocates for everyone around them and to help the fellow man, and just always having that positive and Christian-like mindset to do whatever's needed, to help whoever's needed, and to go out and reach and just be that perfect example as much as possible of a good Christian leader. As far as the application takeaways from this course, so some of my lessons learned, this was a real difficult class for me, I believe. This is my first time ever actually developing a training plan and actually trying to work one-on-one with someone. So considering the workload of your program, as the professor mentioned, I kind of had a little bit too much on the plate for a beginner at first, and I didn't really think it through necessarily. It didn't seem like something that myself maybe would struggle a lot with, but it wasn't me doing the workout. It was the beginner. So that was a rookie mistake on my part. Another thing was the percent 1 rep maxes versus the rate of perceived exertion scales. So you're not really maxing out on dumbbell curls or tricep overhead extensions. So excuse me. So you wouldn't really necessarily want to use those references for intensities for someone when you're trying to prescribe a workout program. It doesn't really make sense. That's another thing I kind of just fell into as a rookie mistake, but as we talked about that and worked through it, it does make a lot more sense to use scales and intensity ratings that apply to the lifts, like core versus auxiliary or accessories, and using them appropriately so it makes sense to the client. Moving forward, another thing, just continuing to improve my own technique. I feel like there's still some stuff myself. I'm not a complete expert on every single body movement and exercise function, so just continuously trying to improve and get my own form in check is something I continuously want to try to achieve, and refining my cue list for exercises. So getting those short, quick words I can just get out and push out to the client as soon as I see it, and getting the repetition down of like being able to identify it, trust myself, and seeing when something's wrong, and then just immediately knowing that cue word that can correct it moving forward. And Kramer Radamus hit on this a lot, the utilization of active versus passive guidance. So the difference between using myself to position a foot or using the bench, in the upright position, like we said with Riley, as a passive guidance measure of letting her know where her back is, and like that butt scoot cue of having your butt towards the bottom with more focus on the butt touch at the bottom versus the shoulder touch at the top. Just knowing when to utilize those tools. It's kind of more sport specific. So as you would progress past, just a resistance training program, those passive guidance or active and passive guidances and cues can really come into play. And I would like to dive into that a little bit more and figure out the many options and opportunities that just sit within that. And again, that's sport specific, so I'm sure there's a slew out there. But overall, I had a great time in this class. These are the references I used. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at any time. Thanks.